Hi, it's Joanna here. Today is my second day after I broke a fast. I have been fasting for 3 days, and before this I was eliminating food in preparation for the fast for about a week and a half. You might think, why she decided to fast? It was a very natural process for me. I was simply fed up with eating comfort food too often. Bread, pasta, cheese, and having alcohol every second day. Don't get me wrong, this food is okay when you have it occasionally, but I don't think it's good for our health if we have it on a daily basis. I simply wanted to rethink what I'm doing. I wanted to give my digestive system a break so my body can rebuild and repair. And also that I can reflect on my eating habits. As some of you know, apart that I'm teaching classes and running a fitness soul, I'm also a triathlete. And this year I was planning to do two half Ironmans and one Ironman. But my spring and summer races been cancelled, so I thought now it's going to be perfect time to do the fasting. And I need to tell you, I wouldn't be able to do it well if not my good friend and also a fitness soul member, Barbara Kuske. Barbara is a doctor and she specialises in rheumatology. She works for NHS with patients clinically and in research. Barbara has been fasting for many years. She also has an interest in nutrition and lifestyle modification in health and disease. And also, she is currently finishing her qualification to become a fasting therapist. I need to tell you something. Being interviewed in the podcast was totally out of Barbara's comfort zone. I have been asking her for many months or years maybe, and after several attempts, she finally agreed to do it. So here we are, talking about 3 stages of fasting, benefits, contraindication, our personal experience, and our reasons behind it. Okay, I hope you will enjoy it. Here we go. So today it's my second day after I broke the fast. So second day of, I don't know, how do you call it? Like leaving the fasting? How you call the days after?
So,
build up.
There's built up or reinstating or rebuilding.
Rebuilding, yeah.
There is an official term for it, but it's really awful. I can't remember. It's not a nice term. I was looking at it earlier.
So I had what I did have today. I had few fruits. I had some bananas. I had some nuts.
Yeah.
Then I had the courgette, carrots, parsnip fritters.
Oh, did they work out?
They were there. Yeah, it worked. I was
good.
when Leslie posted this recipe with eggs inside. I was, surely the gram flour on its own works, but the recipe called only for 4 tablespoons, so that was obviously too little to bind it.
Yeah.
But I put a glass, so the glass made it. Yeah, it was like a onion budgies. I don't know how you call them properly. Just with other stuff, which was good. It worked. So anything you use gram flour, and I was wondering. Actually, I think maybe it was too early for me to have gram flour.
Why?
Because
it's not great. Obviously, it has gram flour is obviously made of chickpeas, and you're not supposed to have or they advise against that for a little while, but it's day 2 and you didn't really fast for that long.
Yeah.
The protein might be a bit challenging in your tummy, I guess.
I'm feeling good after it. I'm feeling fine. But I figured that I've been eating still the beans the day before I started fasting. So I figured if I did it till very late, maybe it doesn't matter. But I didn't have any beans yesterday. So yesterday I was good.
Yeah, that is good. I think that would have just caused you it's quite heavy stuff, and you really don't want that to sit on your tummy.
So today, I'm kind of feeling a little bit hungry, but I don't know if it's maybe more mentally that I'm thinking about food, and I know I'm allowed food, so it's quite challenging.
It's unbelievably challenging, and will be like this for a few days because you feel like you're back into it. But half of the struggle here is the habit and the enjoyment of food, and to get away from that when you're all allowed all of it again is quite challenging.
So for me in my head, I didn't prepare for what's after the fasting. I was like, okay, I'm gonna fast as long as I thought I will do one day, and then I will see how I feel. I will do another day, and maybe my goal was 3 days. So I managed this 3 days, but I didn't think further, and I think that was a little bit a mistake. I didn't prepare mentally that actually I break the fasting on Wednesday, but I have to kind of carry on with the good eating for another week, at least, not having this food which is kind of causing sometimes inflammation. And
absolutely. It's really challenging. I've learned over the years to, on the last day of fasting, I actually sit down with a piece of paper and I map out how I am going to break fast, but also then the follow-up days, so that there is no doubt of my mind perhaps tricking me what I want and what I should be having. And then I go shopping specifically for those days and then have everything at home so that I make good choices when I break fast. So as much planning goes into the breaking as it does into the fasting itself.
Yeah. So this is what I did because I was talking with you every day. What do I do? Help. I don't know. This is what I did on Wednesday. I thought like, okay, I need to actually prepare what I'm going to eat on Thursday. I cannot just eat anything. So
no, exactly. Normally that's absolutely fine. But when you break fast, you really don't want to do that because you kind of, part of it is ruining what you've just done.
Yeah. So I had, when I broken the fast, I had an apple with a cinnamon. I don't know why. I just really wanted the cinnamon. So I
do too. I think it's the flavor that is you're craving the specificity of it. It feels really nice that you can do it again, and you taste it well.
So I had this steamed apple you suggested. And it was good. And 2 hours after, about 2.5, I had soup. So I had a broth, which I had during the fast, just one day, and we can get back to this. And the soup, I made the soup with sweet potatoes and fermented cucumbers. It was really good.
Yeah, nice.
It worked out. I have this book, which is Alkaline Detox. It's a Polish book. So I got the recipe from there.
That combination is great.
And I had the soup pretty much for the whole day, but I had like one tiny bowl not every 2 hours, but I had it like in the morning, then I had it later in the afternoon, and then in the evening.
Yeah. Cool. No, that works. Yeah, you just have to make sure you eat small amounts, and that's absolutely fine.
So today I thought I'm eating still fruit and veg, and I added some beans. Like beans, I mean, in terms of I use the gram flour.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, you just have to, you're building up from about 500 calories on day 1 to 800 to about 1,000, then 1,200 and 1,500. So you have to slowly increase and reintroduce, if you want one fast food group at the time, or just you can do more than one food group at the time if you like. It's really up to you, but not too little, not too less, because if you go too much, of course, as I said, then with the rebound effect is not great.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of almost the same system as yo-yo dieting. I know this is not dieting, but the same principle. And with food groups, you really don't want to go too heavy, so you don't want to have a big salad tonight. That wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But you can reintroduce things like bread or oats or eggs or whatever, milk products if you want.
So when you think, like, for example, if I want to have some grains, when you think today would be okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Would be quite a good day to do it too.
Okay.
Mild ones. So I would go for, as I said, oats or whatever, crackers rather than a big piece of fresh sourdough bread.
Yeah, I cooked the millet.
Millet, fine, perfect.
Millet, and but it's kind of really mashed. I wanted to have it like a little bit. What's the name? That it's not kind of stick together, and it's all kind of mashed together. So I'm just like meh. So I may do a pate from it or something like that.
Yeah. So, millet, quinoa, all these grains are great.
Okay, so buckwheat, I suppose, as well.
Yep.
What about like a barley? But that's
absolutely
too heavy. Fine.
No,
okay,
absolutely
cool.
fine. Yeah,
the
exciting. protein content in barley is low enough.
And then I was wondering eggs, for example, because that eggs, is it like, shall we kind of classify it the same category as dairy? And this is when I would reintroduce it.
Yeah, you can introduce eggs any time from the sort of later in the second day. It's absolutely fine.
Okay, because I was thinking maybe tomorrow that will be the day. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, I'm not planning to go back to everything I've been eating before, like hardcore. But just I think eggs are really good for us. So
yeah.
I'm planning.
No, eggs. There's no reason not to eat eggs from tomorrow. Absolutely.
Okay, and then. Yeah, dairy, I thought maybe a week later, cheese. I don't eat like many type of cheese, but like feta cheese and halloumi.
Mm-hmm. Halloumi is quite a heavy cheese, so I would go later on with that one. Very, very high in fat. But anything else, yeah. I mean, if you don't eat huge amounts, it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, so like a white cheese, I suppose, is lighter, it's better, and the feta is kind of.
Yeah, so anything that looks a bit the color of cottage cheese, I always tell people. Cottage cheese is safe from now onwards, really. So if you have some stuff that's similar, then like you say, feta, for example, then that's totally cool. Feta, kefir, cottage cheese. Not so good as the heavy ones, Parmesan or cheddar or halloumi.
Yeah, and I haven't decided. Obviously, I probably will be eating these things like every hour and then. I don't want to get into the habit of eating these things like cheese, for example, every day.
Mm-hmm.
Because I kind of think if we eat stuff like cheese or bread or pasta every day, it's not great for us. But if we eat it like once per week or something, it's fine.
So I was just thinking about that today when I was at the bakery to pick up bread. I've really enjoyed the last 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it has been, without bread. And it's kind of got me thinking of how to reintroduce it. When I enjoy it, I mean physically enjoyed it. It seems to work well, and I don't want to exclude it, but it's difficult to include it in the right amounts and not lose track. So maybe once a week is quite good. And no more than that, because so maybe whatever, on a Friday, on a Saturday, whenever you cook, and you might have access to a nice bread, but no more than that.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually thinking this. I don't really bake often. I rarely bake, but maybe even baking a bread and making an effort, and this one time you have it. Yeah,
exactly. So either bake yourself, or like we go to the sourdough bakery once a week, in place of baking 1 week. But that's it. So generally no supermarket bread.
Yeah.
So what?
Sorry, why do you think the sourdough is better?
Because it has, if you buy good sourdough bread or make it yourself, number one, it doesn't have any yeast in it. Good non-store bought sourdough bread shouldn't have any yeast in it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the yeast that often causes problems.
Okay.
It's a rising agent. It has complications. Sourdough itself is a bit like fermented. It has a proven positive effect on the gut flora. So and if you buy a good sourdough bread, it's very rarely just white. It has a mixture of whole meal and non-whole meal, rye, wheat, barley, whatever in it. So the variation is better. And as I said, the pure sourdough is good for the gut flora. So it just seems to be beneficial over and more nutritious over normal bread.
Yeah,
most sourdough bread, most sourdough breads you buy in the supermarket, labeled sourdough bread, have nothing to do with sourdough.
Oh yes, that's a good point. Yeah, but the fermented food is generally really good. But with the bread, I heard somewhere that, for example, the gluten from the bread or the sugars are half digested, so they are like the fermentation process is like cooking, not exactly, but like cooking, just with different process. So it's half digested for our tummy, and it's easier.
It's easier for our tummy, and it's the nutritional yield is higher, so you get more out of it. The body can use more. Although I'm no expert in that either. I have no idea how that works and how much that's true.
But I kind of agree with the fermented food, because they have the healthy they call it the good bacteria, and you can more your gut flora, more bacteria, the good bacteria it has, it's better, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. And it's not that easy to include all the fermented and gut flora positive food, so we might as well do it with bread too.
Yeah. But there is a fermented bread, sourdough bread. Then you have the sauerkraut and fermented cucumbers, and you can ferment pretty much many veg.
Anything and everything, yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously you've got beer and wine. No?
Don't forget that.
Beer is fermented, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I have no idea if that works on the same level, but presumably, yes.
So it must be good for you.
It must be good for you. That's what they have done for years and years and years. Surely.
And the wine.
Yes.
The red wine. I actually the red wine. So that was one of my questions to you when did I finish the fast? I think I did finish. When can I have wine? Can I have it on Friday? And you said no.
Yes. I just about fell off my chair when you asked me that.
So when is the good time after the fast to have a glass of wine?
So that is a difficult one, because obviously there are benefits to wine, and generally no reason not to drink wine. However, the fasting, the very definition of fasting is an abstinence from food and stimulants and mind-altering substances. So it depends how you see it. If that element of fasting, the sort of spiritual and mind-body component is important to you, then it's a no for at least a week. Mm-hmm. Because you've just weaned yourself off all that. If that includes the coffee, but we've spoken about the coffee before. Some people do include the coffee, and that's because, again, like the red wine, there is good. I'm not saying you should fast with red wine, don't. But
that's my next fast.
The coffee also has positive effects, and at the end of the day, it's a liquid, and it's a diuretic. And if you don't overboard with caffeine, then some people do use it.
Yeah,
there's no right or wrong answer here, but if you have fasted for quite a few days, you have to be careful with alcohol, obviously, because your body will be taking it up, absorbing it quite quickly, and you might just be it might have a bigger effect than you perhaps normally do. It's like, you don't drink on an empty stomach.
Yeah, I might actually introduce it once I start eating, like maybe dairy and this kind of stuff, and maybe fish as well. Then
that makes more sense.
It's kind of a step
up
forward. But coming back to the coffee, so I quit like everything but coffee during the fast.
Why did you keep the coffee going?
I don't know. I just really felt like this is my guilty pleasure. This is the one thing. I don't know.
Okay.
So, and I did ask you, I think, and you said that people, there are two different nerds people think, some people keep going, some people don't. So I felt like, okay, I'm gonna be this group of people which will carry on. So,
fair enough. I mean, I switched over time. The first few years I did it, I was very, very strict. And then as I kept reading, I saw that people, you do use coffee, and I'm a bit like you. It's my guilty pleasure. I really enjoy it. And if I only fast for a week, I don't do coffee at all. But if I fast for longer, it's the one thing that I kind of allow myself, and I structure my morning around it, and I just really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I have very, very limited caffeine, if at all. Some days I just do it without any caffeine. But strictly speaking, and if you were to go to any kind of set up fasting, you would be told off for that, I'm sure.
So what's happened, I haven't told you this yet. I had coffee. I've been fasting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I had coffee Monday, Tuesday. But on Wednesday, I didn't feel like having it. So I didn't have it at all. I didn't really like, I think, you sometimes, I don't know if you have it. I just like, that was the last thing I wanted to have.
Interesting.
So my body, and that was...
Told you. That's cool.
The Tuesday evening, that was my second day of fasting. I taught classes and my quads started to hurt.
Yeah.
And they started to hurt really badly. Like I would do an hour session just on the leg extension machine when I just extend my legs and bend. And they were really sore. I couldn't sleep at night because they were so sore. It never happened to me before. And after this, like Wednesday was so miserable. So the third day of fast was awful.
Yeah. So that is the downside of fasting for 3 days. That's why, generally speaking, when you become more experienced, they tell you that 8 days in total with the built up and everything is required, because the first 3 days is when things switch and the initial stored crap gets released. So, and that what makes the second and the third day challenging. And muscle cramps and back pain. Remember, Leszek had a really hard time with back pain.
Oh yes, that's true.
Is common, very common. And it's a process where you just eliminate the big core muscles, store things that then get released, including, as I was saying, urate and uric acid from the big muscles. And it's like after a marathon, it just hurts in the big muscles. And you can ease the symptoms a little bit, particularly now that you know that you're prone to it. And if Leszek was ever considering it, as the first thing I would remind him of is to take preventative measures. And there's lots of things you can do about it if you're prone to it. I have never had it. I get pain, but not in the muscles. But I've heard from others who've had it. And it is very, very temporary. It's usually day 3 or day 2 sometimes. And then it goes away again. And it never comes back.
So obviously, because I did only 3 days of not eating, just drinking liquids, I didn't experience if it goes away.
Yes, exactly. So day 4, 5, 6, 7 are easier from there on forward. But it's difficult. You can't start with that. You have to gain confidence slowly that you can do it.
But I did obviously a mistake, which we also talked about when it was happening. I didn't have a broth, which is recommended.
Yeah, so that was really silly, because the very few things you do eat and drink are absolutely essential. So half the glass of juice, vegetable juice, and that broth are absolutely essential, because you need to provide those nutrients, you need to provide the salt, and you need to provide the liquid through that. And if you don't do that, you just make yourself prone to these things. It sounds silly because it's so little, but yeah, that it happens. I've seen it over and over and over again.
So the vegetable juice, what would that be?
So again, people do this very differently. I prefer to fast with warm stuff because I am cold by definition, and when fasting, your thermoregulation shuts down a little bit, goes on a different burner, so to speak. So I fast with warm stuff, but you need half a glass of vegetable juice or fruit juice you can use if you prefer that, and they tell you to dilute it so that it doesn't take a big hit on your tummy. but you don't have that. So that could be a mixed vegetable juice you buy, so made of whatever, tomato, celery, carrot, that sort of thing. Or you can make it yourself if you prefer. Or it could be a fruit juice, preferably a homemade one, but it doesn't have to be. Just the liquid, not the actual fruit, obviously. And you can dilute that. So about 100, 150 mils, and you dilute that into a normal glass.
Okay.
And then you have your broth, 250 milliliters, a quarter of a liter. And again, preferably homemade from vegetables. Add salt, add yeast flakes to provide the basic nutrients.
So do you have one of each per day?
Yeah. So
okay.
It, again, totally up to you what you prefer. It's a little bit of experience based. I do the juice for lunch and the broth in the evening.
So that's my mistake. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I did it the last
you need that.
day. I did it I don't know what I was thinking. The only thing I had, which was like similar, it was the fermented beetroot juice.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably a little, I suppose salt and everything would have been in there as well. But that's quite heavy on the tummy because, again, I've not done it, but I would think that's quite acidic.
I could, now I'm thinking I should diluted it, but I didn't. I heated it up. So it was
essentially, at least you would have had to dilute it. So
the last day, what I did, I had for lunch the broth,
mm-hmm.
and in the evening I had the broth, and I added a little bit of this fermented beetroot juice.
That's okay.
So that was better.
Yeah, much better.
And obviously,
much
I had
better.
through those days lots of water and some herbal teas,
mm-hmm.
and I kept the coffees Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah. So you need a good 2.5 liters of fluid in addition to those meals.
Is there anything else that people are supposed to have during the fasting days? The actual when they don't eat anything else?
So on the short-term fasting, in terms of nutrients, if you are a nutritionally healthy person, as in you have no deficiencies you know of, you don't need anything extra. So no supplements are required, no electrolytes, no protein, nothing like that. The body takes care of itself. As long as you stick to those two things. The only other thing in terms of intake that perhaps play a part is you need to take care of your digestive tract. And the digestive tract is a little bit slow when you fast. Peristalsis, moving stuff around. As we said earlier, you don't, it's not that you stop digesting all of a sudden and your guts aren't working anymore. So you want to take care of that. And that is done either via things like linseed in your juice, for example. People quite like that. Or you can do an enema in the morning or every other morning. It depends a little bit what you prefer. You can use kefir or sauerkraut juice longer term if you're doing this for longer term. And there's also things like I'm just trying to remember the way it's translated.
I was saying this is what everything I had, but I also had my way to helping my digestive tract was having the vital fiber.
Yeah, absolutely, that works. People use fiber powder or a fibrous powder is probably the right word. Or some people use a sodium sulfate, which is like a salt solution that you use to empty out your guts to start with, or a magnesium preparation. So these are all things that just get the guts going, and that you need to take care of that. Otherwise you get constipated in inverted commas.
Cool. So I had the stuff I had like 80% of I think it was psyllium husk, and then the second one was plantago ovata, which is the same kind of plant, just different species. And it was like just little seeds, and I poured water, I mixed it up, and it was kind of a jelly substance.
Yeah, that works. That's the stuff you can buy in the pharmacy when you're constipated in normal life, and stuff works really well. So that's something you have to do every single day, so that you don't get to the point.
So this is what I did. Actually, I just read what the package called for, and it says twice a day. So I had it in the morning and then later on in the evening.
Yeah, Yeah, you can have that with maybe with the fruit juice or just on its own.
Yeah. So next time, definitely, I don't know what I was thinking. I was kind of prepared, but not exactly. So I will definitely have the diluted juice and the broth. Now I know that I need it. And it makes sense. It totally makes sense. But I don't know what sometimes you are just silly.
You learn though. Yeah, that's this sort of discipline, or this kind of the few things you have to stick to, you learn over time. It seems so small and limited, but it's important.
So how long you've been doing fasting for?
Oh, I have been fasting for many, many years. I started almost 20 years ago now, with a wee break in the middle when I switched jobs. I have fasted once or twice a year regularly. I started fasting first for therapeutic reasons, for as a sort of a little mini experiment. I was having really bad allergies and something called urticaria, a really bad skin reaction that was making my life miserable. And I did what you'd have just done, the elimination diet, and came to the point where you kind of stop eating. And all of a sudden, I realized I was feeling better, and my skin, the symptoms I was having went away. And I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to start eating again, because for the first time for many years, I had a good time. I was relaxed. It had gone, but obviously that wasn't very feasible. And I started eating again, but I started reading about fasting, and I have fasted once or twice a year since then, with the long-term effect that I got rid of the allergies, which are really just food sensitivities, or I'm in control. I can manipulate them, and I've never had urticaria again.
Wow, that's amazing.
It just really worked for me.
So what other benefits of fasting you kind of you've seen on yourself, or you know that other people get?
Yeah, it's interesting. People often ask me why should I fast? It seems like a pain in the ass to stop eating. But there's multiple effects on it in particular, and I have seen quite a few of them on myself. There's this, I mean, it's a method that's been around for donkey's years, and it's a way to maintain or change nutrition, eating habits, lifestyle on the short term, but also on the long term. So I kind of use it to take stock, to stop in what I'm doing in a way, and reset my body, my mind, and make life work. We all live in a crazy, busy, consumer-driven world, and this fasting, aside from the actual physical aspects of it, helps to live a healthy, content lifestyle, I think. But also it kind of, for me personally, it helps me to experience physical, emotional, mental, whatever you want to call it, well-being. I feel really well when I fast, and particularly through prolonged fasting, I get a clarity in my head, a clarity in my body that I cannot experience in the same way than I do during fasting. And it just works really well for me. It's as I said, it resets me. And also it's a great experience. You're looking at society whilst you're fasting and experiencing this life without food, sort of an abstinence in a way, in this world of constant consuming. Is really interesting. It's a really interesting experiment, and a tool that I find really, really interesting.
I thought when I fasted for these 3 days that it's kind of so awesome that you have the power to actually stop your choice, and your body can cope with it. It's just like your body is so strong, and we sometimes feel that we have to eat something, like 2 hours later, I'm so hungry, I'm going to die. And then you fast. I fasted for 3 days, but what's the longest one you fasted?
3 weeks, a little bit over 3 weeks.
Wow, that's amazing. That's you must get into the stand, this like Zen or whatever. I don't know.
You do. You adapt. It obviously takes a little practice. I didn't go from 3 days to 3 weeks. It takes practice, but you get into it's your new normal. You have a routine, just you do as you do with eating. And to start with, for me, the toughest part is actually signing up for it once again, knowing that you cannot participate in I enjoy food. I enjoyed cooking. I enjoy the social side of things. Everything we attend these days has food involved one way or the other. And signing up for 3 weeks of essentially withdrawing to an extent is quite difficult. But once you've done it, it's amazing. I love it. It's I'm content within myself for a while, watching the world around me, making it work, knowing very well that my body is doing absolutely fine, and I can concentrate on other things. I have time for other things. Can reevaluate. I read a lot more when I fast. I don't watch television. I stay away from the media. Things like that, and it's amazing. But I wouldn't go from 3 days to 3 weeks.
No.
It's taken me quite a few years to get there, and there's no limit. I mean, they say, as I mentioned earlier, 8 days in total is sort of the most practical, and that's what if you're doing it once or twice a year, the way forward. But you can safely fast several weeks, 4, 5, 6 weeks if you are healthy.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a long time.
Yeah, it is a long time.
But I suppose, as you said, like, you get used to, you don't go from 3 days to a 3 weeks straight away. So my next thing I've got in my head, maybe next time I will try 5 days, 5 days of fasting. And obviously you've got the build up phase and then the bringing the food back phase.
So from a practical point of view, you would then need to step down 1 day, 5 fasting days, and then 3 days of built up.
Okay,
that would be ideal.
The build up is always longer than step down.
Yeah. They say roughly a third of the time you fast should be built up. So if you're considering, and you count the step down day, so for 6 days, you would go 2 or 3 days of built up.
That's So going back to you did mention the elimination diet, and this is obviously what I did this time. And the reason why I did it, I just felt fed up with the stuff I was eating, because the whole situation was stressful, and I didn't really have time to think what I'm eating, and it was just convenient to eat anything. Yeah. And maybe it wasn't really bad, because like many things were homemade, but it was lots of bread, some pasta, wine every second day. And I thought, I have to stop it. So I started with the wine, no wine, no drinks, no alcohol. And then after a week or 5 days, I stopped eating flour and bread and pasta. And then 3 days later or 2 days later, I stopped eating dairy. And then I was kind of cutting until I got, the day before, I was eating just veg, fruit and beans. Is that the correct way? Or maybe I spend not enough time dropping these things down?
No, I mean, so the fasting itself, I think one of the things that we often forget is this fasting is what they call a multimodal approach. There is multiple levels to it. It's not just the eating. So there's a medical aspect of it, yes, but there's also a psychological and a spiritual effect of it, and aspect of it to it. And the preparation for it is incredibly important. The motivation, your mindset is essential. And you cannot and don't want to just stop eating. So in a way, what you've done is great. You prepared your body, but you also prepared mentally of what you're going to do. You don't necessarily need to go through the length that you have done in that. You don't need to eliminate over multiple days or couple of weeks. That's not necessary. If that's what you want and what the aim of this particular fast is, by all means, that's one way of doing it. It's very, very individual what you do. But you, at a minimum, yes, you do want to cut out alcohol, coffee, sweets, and not just the 1 day prior to fasting. Because as an example, to come back to the coffee, we all know that if we just stop eating coffee or drinking coffee all of a sudden, we get a headache. So there's no use to that. So you have to slowly introduce yourself to not having coffee, to not having sweets, to not having alcohol. So it makes a lot of sense to do it that way. And then on the last day, consciously eat less in calories as well. that's the other aspect of it.
Because obviously, if you, as you mentioned, if you stop eating, like depending how bad your diet is as well, right?
Yeah.
So if you're eating like quite clean, I suppose you can just really spend like 2 days, 3 days to prepare. But if you're eating like lots of processed food, you will need more time, like maybe 2 weeks
Absolutely.
to drop all the stuff.
Yes. And that's the other thing to keep in mind. A one-off fast that you do is obviously not going to fix things. It is something I try to see it, or I always, when I talk to people, why do you do it over and over again? This is sort of the cornerstone of a successful, healthy lifestyle. And like most things, one-off fast isn't going to do it. You have to do this regularly, basically for the rest of your life, if you want the benefits of it. And if you have eaten 40 years of very sugar-rich diet, one fast isn't going to fix it. It will take time to come down to the days of fasting. As you say, you have to slowly come down to make it easier on you. And long term, don't get upset if 3 months later you're more or less back to the sugar, maybe not as much. Maybe you have cut out certain things, but it doesn't happen overnight. So you have to slowly get there. You have to slowly prepare yourself for the fasting, and then also the period afterwards. You have to slowly adapt and try to make it work.
I did really like stepping down with food, because there were literally like 3 days before, I was really happy with what I'm eating. I was eating lots of veggies. I've been eating fruits as well, beans, grains, but like whole food. And it felt really, really good, rather than having, like, for example, one of my guilty pleasures is pierogi, which is Polish dumplings with cheese and potatoes and onion. And I love them. So, like, this is kind of comfort food, but it feels good when you eat it, but it doesn't feel that good afterwards.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. You're preparing yourself physically and mentally. You're stopping, resting, taking a break already, so you're much better prepared. Your body is much better prepared and ready, and you're developing a little bit of confidence that you're in control, that you can live without these things absolutely fine. So when you're going into your fast, you have a much better chance to succeed, because you can do it.
Yeah. But it's great to have like person like you who has experience, but also you are doing the qualification fasting, right?
Yeah. It's a little bit on hold now through the COVID disaster, but I am the fasting is obviously a little bit more established in the mainland Europe, and they're mostly in the German-speaking world of Switzerland, Austria, and Germany. But I'm doing a qualification for fasting supervision, I think it's called, shall we call it, where I can accompany people when they do fast, on the medical grounds, but also on the practicalities and on the introduction to it and learning about it. That sort of holding hands, so to speak, when you're fasting, to gain a little bit of confidence and education to do it well and succeed through it. As obviously, as you've mentioned, a few things that can go wrong, and fasting can be done on your own, it can be done at home, but it is more fun. It's easier when you have someone who has done it before. So I'm hoping to be able to provide that service, that setup for individuals who would like to try it.
Yeah, for me, it was really, really amazing having you. I'm not sure if I would do it on my own, because it sounds quite simple, but it's actually quite complex thing. And you have to actually read through what you need to do before, during, and after. Yeah. To Absolutely. Do it right, because you can do it wrong, and you can do little mistakes, which I did. That was my second fast, 3 days fast, and I'm learning with every single one. And obviously that's not the end, because I'm gonna learn with every single one. But having like person like you who will say like, have that. Yes, that's normal. You just make like, okay, it's okay. I'm not dying.
Yeah, fasting is an age-old concept, and we are all perfectly capable of it. That's why we have survived on Earth. The body is set up to survive seasonal shortages of things, but to do it voluntarily in our society isn't all that easy. And you have to differentiate between the fasting for the healthy and the fasting for the ill. I always try to make sure that people know that fasting for the healthy is you and me, someone who is not, doesn't have any critical illnesses, isn't on any medication, and you can fast on your own. But there is a reason why in mainland Europe they have a lot of inpatient but also outpatient sort of ambulatory settings of fasting groups or one-to-one sessions, and that is to learn from each other of those who have experienced fasting before. And the Medical Association for Fasting Nutrition in Germany has set up rules and guidelines for both, for ambulatory and for inpatient fasting, for that very reason. It is a increasingly known concept for preventative, but also for treatment purposes. And it is quite complex. It can be complex. And unfortunately, very simple thing can be quite complex. And if you don't have to make the little mistakes, like you said, you can learn and gain a little bit of confidence from someone else. And it's safer perhaps for some of us. But it also gives you confidence that you can do it, particularly when you do it the first time.
Yes. So obviously you said like in Germany, it's like in Europe, in mainland Europe, it's a concept to treat some disease, or just I'm saying that disease because this is what I understood. So what kind of stuff normally they treat with? So
the evidence, it's of course there's a little bit it's been challenging, although it's an age-old concept and there's multiple methods out there. One of the bigger ones is called the Buchinger fasting, which is a therapeutic form of fasting that goes back to someone called Otto Buchinger, who I think lived from 1870 to 1966 or something like that, long time. And he set that up for healthy, but also for therapeutic fasting. And then the evidence is coming through very slowly, but is bulking up. And the list of things it can be used for is quite endless, but we have different levels of evidence. So for example, the best evidence, it's called level 1 evidence out there, is for inflammatory conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis. It can be used for very successfully, but others with evidence out there, but perhaps not as good quality, would be things like metabolic syndromes. So this is things like insulin resistant diabetes, but also there are things cardiovascular, such as high blood pressure, can be treated long term, chronic pain or migraines, but also things like support for chemotherapy and cancer, in certain cancers, not all cancers. Again, the evidence out there is limited, but emerging. So there's a whole host of things that you can long-term treat with it. I think one of the reasons why it's grown in popularity more recently is because of the aspect of metabolic syndrome and diseases. So things that are one of our biggest problems now in society that are associated with obesity, hypertension, cardiovascular disease. And it is proving one way of attacking this long term.
I read just somewhere, like, when I was looking for recipes and stuff, that they say that fasting is, how did they call it? Like longevity, the latest longevity
fix. Yeah.
And I can see that because we eat all the time. As you mentioned, we are just this consumer world. We just eat every, like few times per day. The food is so easy, so accessible. And we don't really give our body break to repair.
Yeah. A lot of these illnesses, diseases that we are tackling here are lifestyle connected. And of course, if we're going to address that, then of course we can address the consequences. And we know that a lot of these things are reversible. We know that type 2 diabetes in the early stages with lifestyle adaptation is treatable, is reversible, is delayable. And this is one way of doing it.
But obviously, food is fuel, but if we eat wrong fuel, it doesn't do good to our body. But also, just eating constantly, not giving the digestive system a break, it's not a smart thing as well, right?
Yes, exactly. And we know from the animals, we know from our ancestors that this works. There's a reason why, I can't remember, is it Arctic penguins or king penguins? In the Arctic world, they survive long periods without food and lay their eggs in molt whilst they're fast. Well, how come they can do it? And we're not thinking about it.
Yeah. So definitely. I think we've been talking for quite a bit. I'm not sure what time we started, but let's maybe wrap it up. Is there anything you would suggest to a person who would like to start fasting, who's thinking about it, what this person needs to consider?
I think when you're thinking about fasting, the most important thing is to identify why you would like to do it. What is your aim? Why do you want fast? Why is it jumping to your head? And then if you are keen to do it, then get your reading done. Do a little bit of research. Speak to people. I'm always open. I'm happy to talk about it. I obviously feel quite passionate about it, but there are people around to talk you through it and see if you can do it on your own, if you want to do it on your own. But prepare. Don't just jump into it. Prepare for it and know what you're doing before you do it.
Yeah, definitely. And if someone is sick, obviously, maybe they need to take extra.
Exactly. There are contraindications to fasting. We should have mentioned that perhaps quite briefly. It's important to remember that not everyone can fast. The majority of people can fast, yes, but there are people who cannot fast. That's maybe worthwhile to speak to about your GP. It's difficult because not everyone is open to this, but the basics can be talked through. So things like pregnancy, nursing, liver disease, kidney disease, these sort of things, that fasting is very challenging there, and other things need adjustments. So for example, if you do have diabetes, if you have coronary heart disease, if you have cancer, these sort of things, they might need adjustments. And lastly, if you're on medication, they may need to be adjusted as well. So it's important to talk that through. So if you have any of these things, then it might be worthwhile consulting your GP or come and speak to me.
Perfect. So tell just to finish off where people can find you.
That's a good question. I'm best reached via my email at this point. I am in the process of setting things up, and you might if you're happy to, you can
add it to the notes. Yes, I can add it to the notes in the
absolutely
podcast.
I'm in the process of setting things up, and will have a website with details of my practice, my service, with all the contact details, but I am not live yet, so it's something to look out for in the near future.
Awesome. It was great to talk to you and just find out a little bit more. Obviously, we've been chatting about these things over and over, but we never managed to record it. So that was great to chat to you, and that you could share stuff with other people.
It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cool.
And yes, see you soon.
See you soon. Will do.
Okay, I'm going to stop this recording now.
Yeah.
So you can relax.